Welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today's interview is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be a one-on-one. It's not going to be two. It's going to be three guests. Originally, it was going to be five, but there was some scheduling conflicts, and that's totally fine. I'm going to have those two candidates on afterward because I want to have all five of them on because they're all running very interesting campaigns in my home city of Providence. So to the left of me on my screen, I'm not sure how it's going to be in the order on the video, is Chris Ireland, who is running for state representative in Rhode Island House District 7. On my bottom right is Ivan Montanez, who is running in Rhode Island State House District 13, which is actually neighboring to my district, which I'm in House 9 for full reference. And on the bottom left of my screen on my end is Niyoka Powell, who is running for Rhode Island State Senate and Senate District 1. All three of their districts are located in Providence, and Ivan's also contains a part of Johnston. We'll go one at a time for this so the audio doesn't get a little fuzzy. Chris, Niyoka, Ivan, how are y'all today?
I'm doing
All
great.
doing good.
Yeah. Ready. Ready for November.
I was trying to unmute, but I'm assuming Ivan, you're doing great too. And I'm doing great. I'm doing great, and it's great to have all three of you on. Thank you all for giving me your time for this. I can only imagine how busy things are with just 12 days left until Election Day. We're currently filming this on Thursday, the 27th of October. I think we'll start with Chris, and we'll go all around. This is just a general question. Chris, what made you want to run for state representative?
You know, I think a lot of us have the same, being a first-time candidate. Some days enough's enough. You know, for all the years, I've lived in Providence for 20 years. I'm a father, a small business owner, so I know the struggles of everyday life between family, business, and schools for the kids. And, you know, you put them all together and, you know, those are almost all the issues that I'm running on as it is. So just collaborative of 20 years living in Providence, moving down here. And, you know, some days, like I said, enough's enough. You just got to start. You just got to do it. Instead of complaining about a change, you got to start doing it. And that's exactly why I started the campaign.
Niyoka?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Raymond. I'm really appreciative of this. I decided to run for office because I come from a working family. That's what we do. We want to maintain our livelihoods. We want to make sure that our children are taken care of. And we want to make sure that, you know, everybody has a safe place. I've been in Providence for 17 years. I haven't really moved out of the city as much as I would have loved to, but it's become my home. The city of Providence has gotten a gradual disliking to new ideas and has a really difficult time maintaining talent. And because of that, we are stuck in a school system that needs to be reformed, and better education is needed for these children along with care. Um, Elder care is also something that is true and dear to my heart. I'm a nurse. I've worked in healthcare for over 20 years as well. And it's just been very difficult to provide the care for people that require it. The state just simply cannot handle it. And that's why I'm running for office, to make sure these values are maintained and we can have a safe environment to live in.
Ivan?
Thank you for having me here alongside two great people who I deeply respect and I've gotten to know throughout campaigning, and to yourself as well. Thank you for having me again. Actually glad to see you this week on a platform. You were up there. I'm very proud of you and very excited with everything that you have. So I decided to run because I'm a longtime Providence resident. I was born and raised in Providence. I've been in my district pretty much my whole life. I went to middle school, elementary school there, Laurel Hill, for anybody that knows it, Perry, Oliver Hazard Perry when it was Perry. Now it's called Achievement First. I am a graduate from the Providence Public School Department, and I'm currently working there. Being part of my community has a big impact on who I am today. And for that reason is why I decided to step up and run. When we look at our representation, we look at, okay, like what has our current representatives been doing for us? And I've just been tired of hearing the same stuff over and over and over again. Like I'm still hearing messages that I've heard when I was in middle school and high school. It's like, what is going on? Comes to a point where we actually have to start looking into what these representatives are actually doing and what they're not doing. And actually looking at my opponent's record and what he's been doing and not doing was actually what made me decide to run, because my community needs a new voice. It needs somebody that's actually going to be there for them, and somebody that's actually going to fight and stand up for our community and our people in the state. A lot of people are fleeing the state for various reasons, and one of those things are the high cost of living and high taxes and everything. People can't do it anymore, so that's why I'm running.
And we're going to stick with you, Ivan. Let's talk some policy. All three of your districts are located in Providence, and Ivan's, for the most part, yours is in Providence. And then obviously you have the part in Johnson. But a big topic in Providence is public safety, specifically how we should go about funding our police. You hear calls to defund, sometimes even abolish the police. What are your thoughts on the conversation when they say defund the police?
I think defunding the police is a very irresponsible idea, and not very, maybe it's not really thought out. When we think of our law enforcement, those are going to be the people there that protect us when we're in danger, or people that are going to be there to prevent any criminal activity to happen to us, or to our loved ones. So I think defunding the police, it's the wrong message that we're sending. If anything, if we have any type of disagreement with the way our law enforcement are doing things, maybe we should allocate some resources into finding out how to better train them, and better maybe make a better training into building community relationships within the police officers and the community, so everybody has an understanding what everybody's role is. I don't think somebody becomes a police officer because they want to be harsh on anybody, because they want to, I heartily in my heart believe that people want to become police officers because they want to serve and protect their community and make sure that everything, everywhere is a safe place for us to raise our kids and our families to grow old in.
Niyoka?
I agree with Ivan. It would be irresponsible to defund the police. It is a public service. It is people who show up on the front lines when there is danger. To defund the police is to say that whatever goes, goes, and that's when mayhem begins. You're not going to have safe streets without police involvement. You're not going to have safe streets if you defund the police. A lot of people are not trustworthy when it comes to their appreciation of the police. So they feel that they are not heard. They feel that they're just there to manipulate the situation. But at the end of the day, just like Ivan said, we don't go into these fields because we want to, endanger anyone. Just like with nursing, I'm a nurse by profession. Just like with nursing, there's an oath that needs to be said once they graduate from the police academy. They're there to protect the environment. They're there to serve the community. They're there to make sure that, law and order is maintained. Now, I know in the media, there's been a lot of uproar when it comes to police management. But again, training, you have to be up to par with your environment. The community changes. So if there's a conflict of where the community and the police stand, then obviously there needs to be some reorganization in the power structure, or maybe additional training based on culture dynamics, because the city of Providence has changed dramatically when it comes to culture.
Chris?
Ironically, you have three candidates running on a similar platform, and that's not a mistake. Police in our community is all one, and they are the first people we call with any issues or problems or safety. Luckily, living in Providence, I've only had to call them once. And that's when we had an issue years ago with kids shooting BB guns. And, I live right near a substation, and they were there, I think it was like 4 minutes, and, I think unfortunately the police and our first responders, they're undervalued, yet they're overvalued when it comes down to what they do. Again, we always want them there, but we never want them there if it's not convenient, or if something happens. Obviously with everything coming around, when you had senators and city officials, at protests stating for a defund, they should have stepped up and say, how can we change the problem? Let's address, if there's a problem, let's address it. If it's between funding, communication, bring everybody together. I think one thing has to happen, we go back to community policing. bringing the community together. When you talk to police officers, you know, their morale is down. They have a problem with recruiting. They have a problem with their morale, you know, and that's an issue. So they're going to a job that, you know, they want to do, but then you have the media and then you have elected officials not supporting them. You know, and in every profession, we all know that not every profession has everybody doing everything right. And with that being said, you know, a lot of times the media or, you know, anybody will spin it to what they want for that time frame. And they have a hard job, they have a stressful job. So if you're gonna, you know, exactly what Niyoka says, when it comes down to community policing and changing due to the environment, you know, we have to change with everything, between training, I mean, a police officer, they're on the scene almost first for everything. So, you know, between first aid, between how to deal with different mental illnesses, obviously with drug-related issues, there's a lot of things that they have on their plate. So to take funding away from them, finding what they need to get better and how they can adapt to everything that they need. So support is the main thing. You know, don't take away, support it. But like everything else, let's find out, figure what the main problems are and go after attack it. What is the most important issues for the community? Each community is different. Let's go and attack it and give the resources of what they need and what they need now.
Public safety in general is, excuse me, a multi-layered issue. Now Leobor is also in the limelight when it comes to the conversation around public safety, and this would be relevant to all three of you because the police funding is a city one when it comes to a citywide issue when it comes to Providence. Leobor is also it's going to be decided at the state. So sticking with you, Chris, there are sometimes calls to either reform Leobor. Some people want to outright repeal it. Some people are fine with keeping it the same. How do you feel about Leobor?
You know, looking at the idea of the board of policing your own, in theory, always sounds good, but are you protecting or are you trying to fix the problem? You know, and I think that's the problem that a lot of people, when they look at how it's currently set up, some people may feel it's unjustified or being overprotected in some situations for officers who aren't doing what they should correctly. Are they being overly protected by a system that's designed? So like everything else, we have to redesign, we have to modify. We have to make sure it's the best interest of the department, the police officer, and the community.
Niyoka?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think that we're forgetting about the fact that we need to have a congruent system when it comes to the police department and the current environment of the communities. Because if you don't have that, like, then of course I would say defund the police because then their purpose would not be relevant. But you have to change along with the community that you're in. For example, the north end of Providence has primarily been, you know, Italian, a little bit of the Black community sprinkled in. Now, if you look at the dynamics of the population in the north end, it is greatly Hispanic, pretty much toppling the African-American population and a lot of Africans as well, about like 15% African, like Nigerian, Liberian, and maybe now a sprinkling of Italian. So you have to know who you're working with. You have to know how to assimilate to the environment that you're working in. So I think that if you put those programs all together, I think it would work just fine.
And Ivan, how do you feel about Leobor?
I'm definitely not for like taking it away or, you know, abolishing it. Definitely reform, you know, maybe just re-look at it, maybe re-look, see what we can change. Everything can be improved, you know, coming from like our educational system, our Leobor, our police department, everything needs to change. With culture, while as we evolve, we always need to revisit things and see, okay, is this right? Has this been working for us? What can we change? What can we evolve? What do we need to add? You know, as society changes, as culture changes, we also need to like reform a lot of our current laws and protections that we have.
And like public safety, we'll stick with you, Ivan, on this one. Education is also another big issue in the city, and I know the three of you have similar philosophies. I know school choice is a big topic that you're all in favor of, and I believe transparency within the curriculum is another one. So instead of just asking specific school choice, charter schools, I'll just ask. We'll start with you, Ivan. Where are going to be your main areas of focus if you're elected when it comes to education?
When it comes to education, when it comes to school, obviously school safety, we have to secure our kids. Our kids can't go to school and be worried that we're gonna have intruders there, or be worried about, a lot of things. They should be going to school feeling safe, knowing they're gonna be safe and get the education they need. Now, when it comes to our actual education, we need to see what's working and what's not working. I'm not sure if you guys seen recently what was posting in the Providence Journal when it comes to reading. When it comes to reading, we were actually, I think it was 35% last year who were reading at proficiency. This year it's 34 when it came out. Now in math, we actually dropped, I believe, from 7-8 points when it comes to math. I feel like a lot of things that we're pushing forward is, without naming specific bills that are being pushed forward, but I think we need to go back to focusing on math, science, history, and things that are actually gonna elevate our educational system. Like I said, those numbers are really low. And I know nationwide due to COVID, the numbers did drop a lot, but we were low before even COVID even started. So it's like, we can blame some of it on COVID, but what were we doing before that? Because our kids were still not meeting the requirements when it comes to math and reading. So obviously, we're looking at what we can do to bring our students back up to the level, maybe doubling up on some of those core subjects, just to catch everybody up. But I feel like that's something that we need to look at and see what we need to do and reform maybe our educational system as well.
Niyoka?
Definitely. When it comes to the school system in Providence, it was interesting to have enrolled our 5-year-old into public school and then immediately deciding that that was a very bad idea. So I actually would love to promote more of a voucher system in which the dollars follow the student. Because since we pay for it anyway through our tax dollars, it shouldn't make a difference where our children go to school to get the education that they need. As we saw from how, the governor race is going in the state of Rhode Island, anyone in power can refuse to let those grades out. And as a parent, one of the most important things to me is that parent-teacher conference. And I'm glad to say that when it came time for the parent-teacher conference on Thursday that I had at Naomi's school, she's our 5-year-old, I had already had the grades. I had already had the numbers, and I already knew what her rate was in that school. So I was able to have my questions. I was able to go online and assess the testing that they did for the students and see where she fell into place. And where there was need for work, I then had questions for the teacher to say, okay, how can I help her progress? I'm happy to say that she was doing well because she had been homeschooled most of her years. We had a nanny, and so we had a whole bunch of other things happening at home where we had the flashcards, we had, everything that could help her develop that mindset for education. She also watched me stay up many late nights studying because when I was in nursing school, she was born. So I really appreciate the clarity between the school and the teachers. So working on that communication and realizing that, yeah, the test scores are not very well, but we need to fix it as a community. Don't hide the scores from people. That only makes the problem worse. We need to instill more trust into these teachers because just like with the police, the teachers go into their jobs wanting to help these children. They don't want our children to not be taught the information they require. Of course, there's greater powers that be that love to change the curriculum. And like Ivan said, basics. A child needs to know how to read. A child needs to know arithmetic and science, and they need to know how to fend for themselves once they leave high school. So if we're doing a lot of the training at home and teaching the students at home, I'm okay with it. but the money needs to follow the student, because we need to work, and I'm for working families. So if I'm going to be the one that's going to be home teaching my child after she's at school for 6 hours a day, then you need to make sure that I'm being compensated as well for the lack of information that's being provided through the school system. And if it's a babysitting service that they're, trying to develop, then say so. We will pay you as a babysitter and we'll acquire the school information and the monies that go along with teaching our children at home.
Chris?
Going down Niyoka's road, my daughter's 12. We had to make those choices. When she was 5.5 going into pre-K, was there Providence schools or private schools, or we're lucky enough getting our charter school. So like everything comes down to, there's a problem, there's an issue, and people keep kicking the can down the road every year. So I think we have to do it twofold. One, school of choice immediately. We got to get these kids out of the failing system into an environment where they can learn. If it's homeschooled, if it's a charter school model, if it's a public school, if it's a special need, anything that these kids need immediately, let's get it done quick. We're not going to save everybody at first, but what we have to do, and now we have to address the problem. I remember when I was a little kid listening to Reagan, and there was issues regarding education. Over 40 years, and we're still having problems with education. How is that? So either you don't want to fix it, you can't fix it. What is it? And I think as new politicians going into Rhode Island right now, we have to be the solution when it comes down to fixing it. Rhode Island first. Let's deal with Rhode Island, and then we can help all the rest of the other states. School of choice, get them out, fix and address the problem. The charter school has a model. It's not perfect. My daughter goes there. She has good grades, mixed classes from kids, throughout the area. And what I find out is a lot of these kids do very well because it's a community. It's between the teachers and parents or the family unit. It doesn't matter what it's made up of. If it's a cousin and a grandmother, if it's two moms, if it's two dads, whatever that family unit is, that family unit has to be part of the education process. Fix it immediately by doing school of choice. Get these kids immediately out of these systems, to get them what they need to do to catch up, to start succeeding, and then we got to revamp. This comes down to cutting down the pride. Now, we know in Providence, the unit is a huge conglomerate, regarding the education. They have to be part of the solution. They can be part of the solution, right? We should be making a model, because we are Rhode Island, we are so small. We should finally use our resources and gifts to make everything number one for everybody to watch. So I put it out there, the largest labor force, because is with schools. Let's join forces, get everybody together, get on the right page. Let's finally fix it, because we can't just fix the present. We got to fix the future and beyond.
And every rep is going to have their individual issues that they're going to prioritize if elected, because even though you're all three looking to represent seats in Providence, it's different parts of the city. Starting with you, Niyoka, this is a specific question. There's a part of your platform I found interesting, because I, at one point, was an essential worker before this school year. So you want to focus on better conditions for frontline and essential workers. A bit of a two-parter. What would this look like legislatively, and how do you feel about hazard pay?
Legislatively, it would look like a choice kind of document where decisions are made in healthcare through healthcare staff, not corporate. Because there's nothing worse than having a corporation that decides based on finances how to go about making it a better place or a worse place for you to work. Nurses are stressed, they're burnt out, they've done so much through the pandemic, and they deserve way better. Same thing like every other essential worker. They've been working through this pandemic while everyone else was at home. And the blatant disrespect and disregard for all of these families that are affected never mind the COVID situation where all these healthcare workers were dismissed from their professions. But it's just blatant disregard for the fact that the people who are in the field have primary cares as well. They have primary care physicians who believed, and many people I've spoken to, their primary cares believed that it would be ill-fitting to take the vaccine. So aside from the vaccine itself, this bill would give people more autonomy in their bodies. It would give them more autonomy for everything that goes on a mandate. Because if you have someone who is a medical profession licensed through the Department of Health and the state of Rhode Island that says, yes, you qualify to make these decisions, let the people make their decisions. It's not something that should be dictated through people who don't work in the field to begin with, nor understand what the field is like. So I would definitely protect the rights of the essential workers when it comes to determining their own policies on their own bodies and how to go about it.
And how do you feel about the idea of hazard pay for those essential workers who were working during the worst parts of COVID?
Aside from COVID, hazard pay is necessary. And I will say this, it's because the amount of stress and psychological trauma that we've put all of these people in. There's nothing like being responsible for so many things with so little help. Because if you drop the ball, that's your job, that's your livelihood, that's your license, and nobody's going to think twice. So hazard pay is necessary, and it wasn't because of COVID, it was because of how destructive of an environment that was. And that was a blatant disregard to OSHA and all of the staffing issues that everybody's been having before the pandemic. So throw the pandemic on top of that, now you have one person manning a 27-bed unit. That's not safe. So hazard pay, definitely.
And Chris, on your policy section for your campaign website, you want to focus on leveling the playing field for small businesses and ensuring that they can thrive. What measures would you take as a legislator to try to accomplish that?
Business is what's going to get Rhode Island out of everything. When it comes down to making it more friendly, getting people to expand, being able to hire more people, figure out programs to get business going, period. There are people that want to work, the business that want to thrive and they want to expand. And a lot of them, they can't do it, either because they don't have the funds or the manpower to do it. And there's a lot of funds out there that's being wasted. And if we can figure out a solution, and I have a couple of ideas for when it comes down to business to make it expand, is going to help Rhode Islanders. If people have more jobs and they're getting better paid jobs over on, and they're happy because they're making money, they're not stressing. Guess what? A lot of these other issues that we talked about earlier today are not going to happen. So when it comes down to building business, if you have a business, you want to come to Rhode Island, I ask you as a reporter, you do a lot of work. Is it a business-friendly state? What was the rank last time? 47? How many businesses shut down during the whole pandemic? I'm not a big fan of the government getting involved in people's business, but they have to, they help with funds, which is a whole different story, how they were dispersed and how they did it. But the idea just shows that private businesses and the government can work together with ultimately helping the people, the community, and eventually these companies are thriving. Taxes are going to be coming in, income's going to be up. We're going to start solving some issues regarding housing. So everything comes down to, unfortunately, money. The good, the bad, and politics comes down to money. We saw it in education, we're seeing it in the business. Everything comes down to funds and money. Let's actually do it right and get Rhode Island going again.
And Chris, whenever the topic of small businesses come up, I also like to ask about the minimum wage, because it's argued by people who aren't too keen on raising it that if you do raise it, it will hurt these said businesses that are the backbone of Rhode Island's economy. Currently, we're on track to hit $15 an hour by 2025. What are your thoughts on that? Should it be higher, lower?
It's a tough one when it comes down to minimum wage, because depending on how much you're raising it. And if the business owners can't afford to hire you, how can you work? So maybe this is where the government comes in and they do a little subsidy program for, for the businesses that, hey, if you hire this person, we have a limited program. We know there are different programs when it goes on unemployment. Why don't they figure out a program to help do that buffer? So we can hire the people, the business is on the hook for almost all of it. Government will come in, will help with a little bit for a time being to get everything going. Because if the business are making money, they have no problem, putting up the wage. And guess what? There's more jobs out there, it's more competitive. Good people will stay at a company or get the skills and the train to go somewhere else to get higher wages. But to say that, somebody should get paid $28 an hour for a job where the business, and I think people forget about this, a business owner, some days they get paid the most, but the least too. They're on the hook for everything. When you punch out, you have the weekend off, you come back on Monday morning, you're ready to go. The business owner, things on, it's always on their mind. How can we make it better, more efficient? How are we going to make payroll? How are we going to get, the next big client coming in? So that doesn't stop, and you don't get paid as a business owner to think. You get paid to produce and keep the doors alive. And then you throw the stress, going back to everything, the stress between the community, stress between education, you go the stress with family. So everything, again, goes back to money. So minimum wage, should there be something there to protect people? Yes. But does it have to be realistic? Yes. So
Good.
No, between with everybody, right? There's a lot of ideas that we have. This is all fresh ideas that just collaborating with, with my fellow Providence people. We're coming up with some good stuff that and what it is, it's not about us. It's about the community. It's about our state. It's about the future.
And Ivan, there was a topic that Chris mentioned. He talked about housing for a bit in one of his answers. And I want to ask you about that because I know that's not only a big issue in the city of Providence as a whole, but in our neck of the woods too in Providence, housing is a big issue. People cannot find affordable housing to save their lives. It's a very big issue. I'm curious, what policies would you support to try to increase more affordable housing?
Before I get into that, I just want to add to what Chris's conversation is like. If
Yeah,
when we think about why are we raising minimum wage, we're raising minimum wage because the cost of living and everything else is so high. That's the reason why people want to raise the minimum wage so people can afford to live because everything costing high. Now, when we do that, it affects the small business. Now, I'm not for raising the minimum wage. I'm for cutting taxes, cutting regulations, cutting everything so that the business owner can afford to maybe give that employee that extra $1.50. But you can't expect the cost of living to be extra high, expect them to pay their employees $15, $20 an hour. That hurts the business person, the business owner. So go back to the cost of living is like, people want to raise the minimum wage because the cost of living is also really high. We have a lot of abandoned buildings that we can use, convert those into small housings or affordable housings. We have when you drive by downtown Providence, it always breaks my heart to see so many people that are just like either on a step somewhere, like trying to curl up, and you see like rodents running around, and that's the condition that they're living in. We should be looking out for those people. Like, where can we house these people so another Rhode Islander is not out sleeping out in the cold? How can we provide a safe place so this person can lay their head at night and be comfortable and be nice and warm? Something that Niyoka had mentioned before about the Superman building, converting the Superman building into affordable housing where people can actually, like, people that are actually struggling to find a house can live, not incentivize these rich people to come down here and rent out an apartment that's $2,000 in downtown when we got our own people in downtown that can't find a place to live. So it's very funny when we hear people talk in politics now, talk about affordable housing, but then they come out with apartments like that, or even the company Stride that's taking over everything and building not affordable housings. They're creating expensive apartments for who? Let's take care of our people first, the ones that are here now, the ones that are struggling to find somewhere to live. Take care of them before we start creating these big buildings, incentivizing people with big money to come in here. So yeah, sorry, I kind of ran off.
No, I appreciate you bringing those issues up. And obviously, I mean, you and I could have a whole hour-long conversation about the gentrification going on in our city, how affordable those apartments in the Superman building actually are, because a police officer could barely afford that. But I do want to.
So who are they creating those buildings, those apartments for? It's not for our people. It's not in the interest of the two Rhode Islanders, or the Rhode Islanders that are struggling, that are looking for a place to live. That's not who they're addressing this, and that's a big issue for me.
Niyoka, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, because I just recently listened in on the decision to help fund the renovations of that building, which will be coming out of taxpayer dollars, by the way. But one of the things that really kind of infuriated me a bit, regardless of the fact that the building itself has been sitting vacant all these years, the owner of the building, you know, it's either you give it to the city and just cut your losses and let the city do what it needs to do with the building, or you fund it yourself and get the building up to par with what you want it to be. I had an event at Medford Court last Wednesday, and a lot of the people who lived in that building, it's a 55 plus and disabled living facility. And one of the things that they said to me was that the city of Providence and politicians always throw out these buzzwords about affordable living, affordable housing. It is not affordable to them. And they were besides themselves to even know that affordable housing is something that we're still preaching, because it's never affordable to them. It's never affordable on their Social Security. It's never affordable on their, standard of living, or even the monies that they have in retirement. There's no way they can afford these properties, especially during this time. So what they had also said was that they took away the social worker that was at the facility. So now there's no activities, there's no one there to help them. So now you have, because of the lockdown in the state, now you have all of these people with no way of reaching out to anybody on a legal standpoint who used to come in and help them with all the things that they need. So we've neglected an entire generation based on our own personal gains. So the Superman building, to me, it's one thing or the other. You should have sold it to the city and cut your losses, or let the city do what it needed to do to produce a program where we have a 40% of nonprofit organizations in the city do their due diligence. You're taking a tax break from the rest of the city. Don't tell me that Brown University cannot set up a program where now you have your doctors in training who will come in and do vital signs and do assessments on these people. Have people come in, have micro lofts where you can house the homeless, have social work from Rhode Island College or from all the other universities surrounding the city who can come in and help these people with the resources. Have Department of Labor and Training right downstairs. The courts are right next door. If you have anything that you need to work on, it's all in one place. Get these people to work. Get these people doing something that makes them productive, because that's all they need. They want to be productive in this society. They don't want to be shunned and thought of as someone who ruined their lives because of drugs and alcohol, because 99% of the time, that's not why they're homeless.
And Ivan did talk about the cost of living, which actually plays into one thing I wanted to ask all three about. I'll stick with you, Niyoka, and Ivan, you pretty much gave your stance on it. So lowering the sales and gas tax is a popular policy right now, mainly from those on the more fiscally conservative side of things. How do you feel about lowering those two taxes?
Lowering the gas tax, definitely, because that's a really good way of helping other working families. I mean, we can all attest to hearing the cheers that happen when they're like, oh, well, the gas price is down. I'm sorry, I'm still paying $20 more than I used to fill my gas tank. So to have it down 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent is not any money in my pocket. So yeah, definitely getting rid of the gas tax until people can get themselves together. because something like the car tax should have never come back to begin with, because Rhode Island did get rid of it. If your vehicle was 10 years or older, you didn't have to pay taxes on it. So I don't know how that came back. So now they're looking at it as a win, that now we don't have to pay it anymore. I'm sorry, that you probably owe us all money for that.
It did also disproportionately affect those in Providence too. That's where most of the
Exactly,
residents live.
exactly.
So it would, I mean,
Yeah.
if you were all reps and senators at the time, it would hurt your constituency. Chris,
Correct,
Chris, I
correct,
want to,
yeah.
I want to tag you in on this. How do you feel about lowering the gas and sales tax to get that relief right away for Rhode Islanders?
This should have been done in January. And ironically, those who did the charade of fighting for us or trying to portray they're fighting for us, they didn't vote for it. They had the opportunity, like the person that I'm going against, he loves doing dogs and pony shows, and he could have voted for the gas tax to be lowered. They didn't. You know, anything, energy tax, Rhode Island, if you Google it, if I'm not mistaken, Rhode Island has about 58 taxes. Not one of them during this whole crisis was addressed or thought of to be reduced. 58, I think it's a little bit more than 58, right? Go on the Division of Taxation, try to find out all the taxes. I couldn't find it. So taxes in general, they have to be reviewed right now to find out how much money is coming from where, what they are, and do we really need it? Because when it comes down to the gas tax, again, that's temporary. It's a temporary, if it's 6 months, 10 months, whatever it is, it's temporary, but it's not addressing the issue, but it's going to help the average person a little bit, you know, and same with anything with utility, gas, anything regarding any taxes, they should have suspended it for X amount of time to get a temporary relief because they didn't step in enough to help everybody.
Ivan, I do want to ask you a specific question because I noticed on your Facebook page you've been criticizing your opponent. For reference, his opponent is a Democrat, Ramon Perez in House 13. You've talked about how he's missed 25 of the last 56 legislative work days. Can you explain for those watching what that means and why you believe it's relevant?
Well, first of all, the reason why it's relevant is because as taxpayers and as voters, we elect our representative to be there at work to represent us. If he wanted to be a part-time candidate, he should have at least let the people know, hey, if you vote me in there, I'm only going to be in there half of the time. So I'm only going to give you our community, our constituents, half of the voice in the state house. It's 56 days. 56 days and you can't show up for 25. If me and you didn't show up for half of the time at work, we wouldn't be getting a paycheck, would we? So why should he get taxpayer dollars to show up half of the time for 56 days of work? It's not right. And when you count the bills that were actually put forward during that time when he was out, it was 222 bills that he did not give our community a voice in, and he let another representative from a different district give a voice for our community. That should be shameful. You know, and that's why I tell people is like, hey, I'm going to be the full-time candidate. I've been part of the community my whole life. I work in the school department during the summertime. I'm the lifeguard coordinator for the city of Providence, and I'm also one of the wrestling coaches at one of the high schools in Providence. So I don't have time to be a part-time. You know, I'm part of the community. I'm in there the whole time, and that's why I feel like our community needs someone that's actually going to be there when our representatives are called to duty to represent our community, should be there all the time.
And when I had you on last time at the Ashley Kalis campaign bus unveiling event, we talked about term limits a bit, which is a popular topic I like to talk about on this show, because for those watching, a rep or senator in Rhode Island can get elected every 2 years forever until they physically can or get beat. Ivan, I believe you said you wanted to serve no more than 2 terms. I mean, that kind of answers my question, but what's your stance on term limits?
Yeah, I mean, my stance from the beginning has always been, and even when I do get elected, don't vote me in after 2 terms. Let's vote somebody else in. I feel like everybody in the community should have a chance to represent your community. You know, I should not stay there 6, 10 years, 15 years representing my community, because then, and I'm not saying I'm going to be like that, because I know myself and I know I'm a hardworking person. But after a certain point, certain people start getting lazy once they get in there. they start forgetting exactly why they got in there, and they start worrying about, hey, I'm going to miss work today because you know what? My people are still going to vote for me in there. And then you start missing 25 days. Or when you start getting sloppy, and like in August, when you start using your own campaign funds as personal use, that's very sloppy. Or in 2017, when you bring in an article to the State House to try to show a bill, and you don't review it, and you say your friend gave it to you, but that's very irresponsible of you, because if somebody gives me a piece of paper to pass on to my colleagues, my responsibility is to make sure that everything on that document is correct and everything that I agree on. So 2 things, either you're lying and it was yours, or it was really your friends and you're really irresponsible. And that's why we need to keep our politicians fresh. We need to make sure there's term limits so a new person can come in. Because you know what? Something I always tell everybody, the hardest working person is always going to be the new person at the business, whatever job you do, because they have something to prove. They're not going to take longer on breaks because they know I just started this job, I'm being watched. They're going to make sure they put in 100%. The hardest working person is always the newest person at your job.
Niyoka, you're running against an incumbent who's been there for a couple of decades. So how do you feel about term limits?
Well, she's been in office since before I was born. So that tells you something. Definitely yes on term limits. And I believe the same as Ivan, because when it comes to term limits, I feel that it is our civic duty to participate in the political process. I know it's not for everyone, but at the same time, look at the city of Providence and the amount of people we have here, the amount of educated people we have here, and to utilize them when it comes to the direction in which our state is going is paramount. So I definitely, just like with Ivan, I don't see myself being in office for more than 2 terms because it is not fair to the community unless the community writes me in. That is a decision that the community is making to get me back in there. But I think it is our civic duty and our rights as Americans to participate in this. A little background on myself is I was born in Jamaica. I wasn't a natural born citizen to the United States. I received my citizenship when I left high school and decided that, you know, a lot of things that people take for granted is the fact that they become a citizen to the United States and, you know, it's fair game from there. It took me a long time to actually decide to go for my citizenship because what I felt was I was leaving my home in which I grew up in. I was leaving my family behind and removing my liege state and taking on someone else and saying, okay, I will die for you. That is how I looked at getting my citizenship. And so it only makes sense at this time in my life from learning everything that I've learned from being here and going through the school system in Stonington, Connecticut, and being in AP government and understanding and being part of the political process, that this is a right that every citizen should obtain and be able to have their voices heard. Because if you're going to sit there and let other people dictate how your life is going to be, we will end up back in the same situation that we're in right now. So right now, we need to get our working families out there. We need to respect tradition. We need to keep our homes safe. We need to keep our schools safe and our children safe. So term limits is a must because just like with how everything is happening right now, we need to change with the climate. And someone who has been in office since before my, little ovum became a fetus is a little out of touch now. I'm sorry, a little out of touch now. And I've tried to do interviews and they've been denied. So that tells you something. Your constituent is asking you for an interview and you won't even respond. So it's time for change.
Chris, how do you feel about term limits?
Ironically, everyone's on the same page. Should there be term limits? Yes, depending on the position. When it comes down to how long, that's something that it should be a serious consideration. Is that some days a lot of people say the first year you're just trying to figure it out, the second year getting stuff done. So do we potentially make it a longer process, maybe a 3-year instead of a 2-year or a 4-year? Do we make it more full-time, just not part-time? Because the problems don't go away in the fall. So I think it should be open discussions, but should someone be in there for 20 or 30 years? No. That's just way too long. Because right there, if you're in it for 20 or 30 years, and with all the problems that have been happening, you're part of the problem. So guess what? If you're part of the problem, we're the solution. And when it comes down to politics, the parties have to start cleaning themselves up. So if there's internal problems between a candidate, between some things they do, some things that they say, how they act, what they do, their policies, their overall philosophies, that political party should take care of their own and either get rid of them, force them out, whatever they need to do to change it, to get rid of it, you got to do it. But 20, 30 years is way too long. So yes, I'm gonna same page. Limit the term, but I think we have to redefine it too. I think we have to slightly change it too.
I feel like we're at the point now where we could do some non-political topics, and then I'll ask my famous Rhode Island best known for question. So Chris, I'll stick with you. You're a big wrestling guy. You run a wrestling promotion. So I feel like I have to ask. I'm just gonna do like a lightning round. So just 3 quick ones, so then I can get to Niyoka and Ivan. Favorite match of all time?
Usually has to do with Flair. I mean, like Flair and Dusty, Flair and Steamboat. In the mid '80s, growing up, I was watching WWF. Once I saw the NWA and Flair, man, it's Ric Flair, man. Ain't usually anything with him because it meant something was emotional and you cared.
Absolutely, and they were all classics too. Storyline wise, his character was just so energetic. Favorite wrestler of all time, is it Flair?
Yeah, it is Flair. Even now, I train guys. We do fundraisers. We train guys for the next generation. My original trainer was Killer Kowalski. So I always wanted to be a wrestler when I was a little kid. And it was a dream. And ironically, 25 years later, the same dream that I had when I was a kid is the same thing that's happening to people coming through our doors. So it's I've never heard anyone say about that with politics. So I dreamt of being a politician.
Kowalski, he was the one who did the claw, right?
I hear all the time.
Was Killer Kowalski the one who did the claw?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. I had to think about it for a second, but yeah, he's iconic. The fact that you were able to train with him, that's awesome.
Yes, ironically, my class in '97, 5 out of the guys in my class runs a wrestling training center in New England.
That's cool.
So which is ironic. Almost all of us, as our careers progressed, went down that route.
And are you an AEW or WWE guy? I gotta ask.
See, that's a tough one. And the reason it's a tough one is WWE, they're the king. They're the NFL. And AEW, the new kids on the block, I love it because it is competition. And competition thrives. It gives more of the talent places to work, more options. So that is good. Is AEW perfect? Far from it. But when you look at it, I don't know if you look at it, it reminds me of the old Nitro set.
Yeah.
It has that feeling. And Nitro, back then in the 90s, I like Nitro over Raw. I mean, not a lot of people said it, but when it was hot, it was good. Not when it was like, late 2000s. But, WWE is the king. And if you look at who's running WWE right now?
Triple H.
A Killer Kowalski alumni. So what would be better in Rhode Island than a Killer Kowalski alumni in the State House?
You never know. It could happen. Niyoka, I want to ask you a non-political topic. For those watching, Niyoka has brought a special guest. Is that Naomi?
That's Naomi, yeah.
Hi, Naomi.
She just woke up from her nap, but she's like back to napping.
That's okay. I gotta ask. So Niyoka,
it wouldn't be an interview without a Naomi candid appearance. So
there you go. I gotta ask. So Niyoka, you attended Rhode Island College, and I always love to ask alumni from the college this question. What was your time like as a student?
I'm sorry?
What was your time like as a student at Rick?
Oh gosh. Well, believe it or not, it was the first time that I found out about like actual racism. And I'll say this because it was quite the experience. I grew up in Stonington, Connecticut, and it wasn't really an issue to me being, a person of color or Black or whatever you want to call it nowadays. But it wasn't until I joined one of the organizations that I was told that maybe I should do the phone calls because people are more apt to, send donations if you sound white. And you sound white. I was like, wait a minute here. I have so many other qualities, but that was what they wanted me to do. They were like, yeah, nobody would think that you were Black, so we'll get a lot of donations. And I was like, that's ridiculous. But aside from that, it was a very good experience. I still have a bunch of friends that I went to Rick with, that are lifelong friends. It's just amazing the atmosphere that was there when I was there. And, I remember Donovan before it became, Donovan and the other food court that is on the campus as well. I was in Thorpe Hall, then I was an RA in Brown Hall and New Hall over the summer. Like, it was amazing. There was so much going on. I was going to play tennis, but then decided not to because I played tennis all my years from like 9 years old on, and I was undefeated actually, but I was just like, I can't do more tennis. But it was an amazing experience. I loved every minute of it. My professors were amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's Rick. It's
Rick does.
Anchorman.
It has, yeah, exactly. Go Anchors. Rick does have a lot of great
Yeah.
professors. I will say that. I wish it would get more resources from the state level.
Definitely,
I may be a little bit biased
definitely.
because I go there, but
No, you know what though? Every year I see something about, URI needing something that taxpayers are going to pay for. And I'm sitting here going, okay, well, I'm happy they're just now revamping a lot of the buildings on campus for Rick because they were like falling down.
yep.
And I don't understand how being a state school, it was so ill-funded and we had no problem sending funds to like URI and everywhere else. But yeah, I'm happy to see what has happened with Rick and how the campus is up and coming and just beautiful all around. I just hope that, the people who graduate from there appreciate what it is and not disregard what it was. Because Rhode Island College was actually the #1 teaching college I'm not sure if it was in the United States or New England, but that's what Rick was prized for, were its teachers. Irony, we're having an issue in Rhode Island with teachers. So maybe, I know Joe Biden was over there and maybe that will rekindle some of those, this is where we're coming from as a university or as a college mentality and bring back that strength to the teaching programs that I know Rhode Island College can do. And fun fact, my great aunt Sandy is actually a graduate of Rhode Island College's
Nice.
teaching college. Yeah, that's how I knew about that, was that it was a teaching school. Yeah.
That's really cool. Ivan, I want to tie you in with a non-political topic. You're also in media. You host the Inner Circle podcast on YouTube. I got to ask, how did you get interested in podcasting?
So when I got interested in podcasting, I always wanted to do something where it was like, I always wanted to do something like podcasting. Now, when COVID hit, I took advantage of that. I was like, oh, well, we can't see our friends. We can't hang out with our friends. I'm like, why don't we just talk to each other through Zoom and just put it on air, and we can share our conversations with everybody and people can jump in on what they agree on, what they didn't agree on. So that's how it basically started. It was just me trying to connect with friends during COVID. And it just ended up being like a weekly thing. Even after COVID, we're like, we're going to keep this going. And, yeah, just have fun. We try to talk about non-political stuff because especially most recent years with the past administration and with this administration, I feel like politics have really divided everybody. And I feel like everybody was just like, you're on this side or you're on this side. There's no in the middle. And it was like, so it's kind of one of those things where I wanted an hour where we could just talk about everything else, everything else that we used to talk about before. We were so polarized and politics was so magnified and everything. So that's how it started. We play games at the end. Like if I have a guest, then we'll play like a fun game in the beginning just to get people to know them. Then we'll play again at the end just to like keep the vibe fun. Whatever topics we were talking about in the beginning, if it like got too serious, we'll end it with a game just to like get everybody back into like, a fun feeling and stuff. So yeah.
And we'll definitely have a collaboration soon after.
Yes,
after
you gotta come on.
For sure. I saw the comment a while back, and I really wanted to find it, but it was gone. I felt so bummed out. But I'm glad I know that you run the show. So we'll definitely do that collab soon after the election cycle. But after on November 9th, I'm taking little bit of a break, and then we'll do the collab. And I know you're ready to take a break too after the campaign.
Yes, I got my plane ticket ready to go.
There you go. You got. I mean, at this point, it's every day. It just gets to be exhausting. I'm going off on a tangent, but Ivan, I'm going to ask you the famous last question. It's tradition on this show. I like to ask it at the very end to take a step away from politics. In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
I think Rhode Island is best known. There's a couple of things that we're known for, and I think it's because I lived here for so long that it's like anytime you say this, it like reminds you of Rhode Island. Like when you think about what state can you get to from one side to the other side in 45 minutes, you'd be like, oh, Rhode Island, probably small. When you think of our oceans or clam chowder or something, you think of Rhode Island. Caw hogs, you think about Rhode Island. Or even like in the fall time, now that we're in the fall, like the east side with all those like different colored trees. Like there's a spot in downtown where if you look up to like Risley area, we have such a beautiful like fall scenery. Like even like Slater Park, I recently just posted like pictures from Slater Park. It's like Rhode Island is very, very artistic and very, very beautiful. Like we just need people that care and want to take care of it and preserve all that beauty that we have and keep people here. So yeah, sorry, that's more than one thing, but
no worries.
It's my hometown.
Ivan, you know, there's
pep it up for everybody who's not from Rhode Island. I gotta talk good about it.
There you go. You gotta talk us up, and there's no rules on this show, so no worries. Niyoka, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
I will say the beaches, because coming from an island, I mean, there's so many different beaches in the state that people can go to. I'm not partial to just one, but Beaverdale. I definitely love me some Beaverdale. But it's amazing to see the shoreline. And like Ivan said, this is such a picturesque state. And being that it has 4 seasons, it's just amazing. And it's definitely a blessing. The people are a blessing. So let's help these people because this is who we are. We're Rhode Island.
Absolutely. We're a beautiful and very friendly, small, tight-knit state. And there's nothing better than it. Chris, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
They already gave the good answers, like obvious. So I'm going to go down Narragansett beer. Right? It doesn't matter if you have like the blue or the red. I prefer the blue. Narragansett Light, that's usually my number one beer when it comes down to it. But that comes down to tradition. Rhode Island is a huge, the thing about Rhode Island, people don't realize is Rhode Island is very segregated when it comes down to it changes different sections of the state and of different cities and between culture and we have a lot of things that are offered that people don't know. And I think literally people have to get to know Rhode Island better. And we only get to do that by fixing and making everything better between the education, bringing back the business, bringing back the communities. So we want to be known now as number one. So it's not about the beaches anymore. It's about making Rhode Island number one in business climate, education, safety, and a great community for everybody.
I think that's a good point to wrap things up. Chris, Niyoka, Ivan, I want to thank you all three so much for giving me your time for this interview. I really appreciate it. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Absolutely, anytime.
I'm a clothesline Chris in a second. Right in that wrestling. Once we're over with this, boy Chris is gonna be on his back.
Oh man, that's a riot. And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.